Spring of 1983, I was playing for the San Antonio RFC, and so was our first president, Tim Murphy, and about 10, 12 other people. And I was, the president the last 2 years there, 82, 83 at San Antonio, and Murphy was the tour director and many other positions, and took us on a tour we circled Ireland. In fact, the Harp and Shamrock Society bought our jerseys for us that year. Had a good time, came back. Things weren't going so well with us then, and so we wanted to make a few changes, and I think we were probably a little more optimistic about things than we normally would be. And the people that we weren't so pleased with wouldn't change, and so we decided, well, we'll start a new club.
Bill and I both pretty much saw the same philosophy of trying to get everybody involved, whether they were athletes or off. And if a guy came to practice all week and he'd been there for a month and hadn't missed a practice, well, what was happening is somebody else, an old ex-player, would blow in the town, and they would put him in, and it really wasn't fair to the other guys. So we decided to go ahead and form the new club, and we also did along with the JCs. So we had the funding of the JCs to originally start out, and also the Harp and Shamrock Society, which was involved with us quite a bit when we first started out.
We didn't have enough for 15s, and so then by the fall, we checked with the boys from the Stars, the South Texas area rugby side, and they indeed wanted to come play as well.
I was lounging on my couch in my apartment, nodding off, and the phone rang and woke me up. And this guy named Bill Harmon, who was actually an enemy of mine because he played for the other San Antonio team at the time, and I played for a group of stellar performers called the Stars. Small group of stellar performers, but we were called the Stars. And he asked me if I would consider being part of a new club called Alamo City.
It was easy for us, and it was easy for me, I should say, to join those group of men to form this club. And I have not yet looked back to any regrets of anything that we've done as a team.
Eventually, for a first-run club, a club coming out for the first time, they had a very good pool of experienced and good players. And I got involved in that really I got a phone call from Tim Murphy asking me if I would like to, if I care to do some coaching. Now the problem was that I had never done any coaching. In fact, in those days, when I was playing rugby, I played rugby from 1941 up until about 1960 for about 20 years. And in those days, they just didn't have coaches. Very, very few clubs, even senior clubs, didn't have regular coaches. Even the international teams didn't have full-time coaches. They came together with the players before a big match and did a few practices. So I had no experience in coaching, but I had a lot of experience in playing rugby.
You know, when you've got a guy like Doc Bowie as your coach, you can't not go to practice. I mean, you knew that he was going to put in a long day at the hospital. He was going to work his tail off there. Who knows when he started and when he ended, but he was at the field on time, drills prepared. I mean, we have a drill named Doc Bowie, right? I mean, that says our field is named Bowie Field. You could tell right there how much he means to our club. And when you're out on the pitch with Doc at a practice especially, you just couldn't help you knew he was watching you. You know, it's like Dad's there watching you. You better give everything you've got for him because he's out here for us.
When I was a young man, when I first started playing rugby back in 1987, and I was still young, although I was old, but I was young. Showed up at training, and here's this guy. I mean, he's like the Scottish ghost, and he's out there. And got to understand his accent to start with, and he's directing all these guys. We're running up hills, we're touching the fence, we're running down backwards, we're doing all this stuff.
And then on game day, he didn't say a whole lot. He stood there with his hat on the sideline, but you knew he was watching. And if you got up slow, or you didn't follow after the play as fast as you could follow after the play, it was like, oh my gosh, he's watching me, I got to get going, because you respected him that much and you wanted to give everything you had for him.
Because rugby is such an international sport, that you met all these crazy characters who came to the United States to play rugby. And you know, there were a lot of them that came to Alamo City while I was there, and I think they're mostly in jail now. But the one guy I got to mention while we're talking about this is Kevin Howell. Here's this cat who comes in, and he was sort of a good-looking surfer dude, and his buddy was Donnie McLeod. I remember Donnie only because it was the first day at practice. This is the same day that Louis landed on me in the mud and just smashed me out. Donnie, I go up to tackle Donnie in practice. I have no idea what I'm supposed to be doing. And Donnie says, "Mate, you ever try that again, I'll clean your clock." And I was like, I don't even know what clean your clock means.
Kevin and Don came over at the same time. Don was the real flashy, pretty guy. First one to the girls in the bar, of course, and first one to the kick on the field. Kevin, solid, intelligent, hard worker. Everybody loved him, nice guy, perfect rugby skills. And Gordy were there, and another guy named Neil Baytel, which is probably the first time we had an Irish scrum half and an English fly half, and they got along okay. But I really started to understand and appreciate how rugby is supposed to be played. And Gordy and I had a lot of great plays together where we'd make good eye contact and do a lot of stuff because I finally got it. So the foreign influence was significant on me figuring out the game.
We hosted two teams. We had an Argentine high school team in a town that time, and also an English team. It was British Caledonia Airways. And so not only was one side away, we had to go 2 games going on at the same time here at home. And on the way home that night, Bill's wife was the designated driver, and they had their van full of drunk Englishmen. And they pulled up, and we're at Broadway and 410. And at the first little light there, they pulled over, and there was an ice house there, and they saw this gentleman just whooping some lady's ass. And they, Marcia, of course, pulls in there, and they go, what's going on? As fellas, none of your business. So about that time, the doors flip open, and here go the B Cowboys, take off chasing the guy. And they end up finally finding him into a tree and pretty much whoop his ass. The girl had just stopped. She'd gone off the bus and gone in the ice house there to get something to drink. And this gentleman had grabbed her coming out of the store and was attempting to rape her and take her purse. And the boys found the tree, and the police came up and said, well, how have we known you'd been doing this? We'd driven around for about another 15 minutes beforehand. Well, of course, immediately the next morning, because we had all kind of news people coming in, and Paul Harvey News and the London Sun, I think it is, whatever it's over there. And on Paul Harvey News, it's pretty funny what's going on. In San Antonio, Texas, English rugby team was visiting and saw a lady being attempted to be raped, and they came to her rescue. And the gentleman ran, but not fast enough. Page 2, and went on to that. So it's sort of funny. We've really, for a small club down here in Texas, which is sort of out of the rugby mainstay of the world, let's say, we've really done a lot and have gotten a lot of publicity.
My most memorable moment on the field is winning the TRUs against Bay Area, because the night before we had beaten Arlington that Saturday, and we were out and about, and we caught wind that the Bay Area side had already printed state championship t-shirts. So, it was just so pleasing to kick their ass. They've always been a thorn in our side, and I'll never forget that. That was a great TRU win. It was a great day for Alamo City.
My first year, we made it to TRUs that year, and we had to play the Huns. I think, in a quarter or a semifinal, and Dave Pelton from the Huns got a pass out on the wing, and he didn't see me coming, and I just leveled him. I mean, just leveled him. Big crowd pleaser. Everybody was yelling and screaming and cheering, and Gordy O'Rourke was our scrum half, and he came up to the breakdown where I had nailed Pelton and was screaming, you know, good hit, Sean, and all of that. And while he was cheering me on for it, the ball was laying on the ground. One of the Huns picked it up and ran off and scored, I think. Yeah. Thanks, Gordy.
Watching a match once, and I guess it was a maul or a ruck, I forget, but Damon Peterson was on the bottom, and you just see his big happy face, and he grabs this guy's ankle and bites into it like a cob of corn. And I don't know, he was such a nice guy.
My greatest memory on the pitch was a game that we actually lost. We played, it was a Houston tournament, late 80s, I guess. We played against the Woodlands. And thing about that game, and I tell this to my kids, I have 3 boys right now, and I tell them this, I must have, told them this story 6 times already. Every time they play sports and they have a losing game, I always tell them the same story. But we played against the Woodlands, and I'd heard throughout the tournament that, oh, these guys from the Woodlands, they're incredible. So as it turns out, we had to play them next, and we played them, and everybody on the team was just sharp. Everybody on Alamo City's team was just playing great rugby. And the game was just going back and forth, and we ended up losing right at the last minute or so, last few minutes. But I don't think anybody hung their heads that day after that game, because everybody played their best.
When we went to the TRUs in one of the years, we went to so many TRUs, I just can't remember them all, but we were playing the Blacks in the semifinals, and one of our favorite teams, of course, in the TRUs are the Austin Blacks, and we played them in the first round, and they were pretty confident that they were going to annihilate us, pretty much. That was their year to go all the way. I think their coach was named Alan something, Sharpley, I think was his name. And he was pretty confident that we were just somebody to push aside on their way to playing the Dallas Harlequins. And we knocked them off. We beat them that year in the semifinals of the TRUs and went on to play the Quins in the finals. Lost to them in a very good competitive game, but got to go to Westerns anyhow. So I think that was probably one of my best memories.
The highlight by far of my career, to be able to get on the field and play with my son. Very few people will have that opportunity. I thoroughly enjoyed that. I think the difference was that my son had some athletic ability and I didn't. So there was a difference in our quality of play. And so he went on later, and I was able to watch him play at the collegiate level and so forth. And it's just very, very exciting. Like I said, certainly the highlight of my rugby career and one of the highlights of my life, to be able to get on the field and play with my son and his friends, because they kind of grew up at my house. So we had a ball. Yes, sir.
Pete and Tom Videcki were on the scene at the time, and I'd only been playing maybe for a couple of years, so still a greenhorn and had no idea what I was doing. And at the time, the good sense of the club still had me as a winger or a fullback, which is absolutely the wrong place for me to play, as it turns out. So we're in a game, don't remember who. Tom was either the other wing or the fullback, and I was either the fullback or the wing. And I remember, and Peter was, he was captaining the team, and he couldn't speak English, and he was flanking. And during the game, a kick came back towards Tom and I don't think that it was fielded well, and probably something happened. And I just remember Peter coming from the breakdown in front of us, and in Polish was just, letting Tom have it, just laying into him. And I had no idea, and I'm like, whoa, this guy's really laying into his brother. And Tom was like the biggest, nicest guy. Later in the bar, sitting around, and we're having beers, and things are improving, and I don't remember if we won or lost, didn't matter at the time. Tom and I were talking, and I said, Tom, your brother was laying into you. What was that all about? What happened that made your brother come back and yell at you? And he goes, Mark, I must tell you, he was not yelling for me, he was yelling for you. So here's this guy, instead of bitching me out, he was taking it out on his brother, but it was because of my play. So that was certainly one of my most memorable moments.
We were coming back to Victoria. We'd been down to Victoria, and we had two vans. I had a big old Dodge Maxi van, and Harmon had a van. And we're coming back and forth, and we were trying to set a record on how many moons you could hang out of a van. And I think my van actually won, although, because we had the back doors open, we had them hanging out the side, we're driving with the moon hanging out. But Richard Prim was with us, and they couldn't see him as night, so we got disqualified because they couldn't see Richard, and we actually won the deal, but they said it was a tie.
Another incident was when we went on tour of England, and we had our games, and we were moving from one town to the other, and we stopped at a place in England which was very touristy, and we let the boys off, and about 3 or 4 of the boys and some of the people who were, like, some of the wives who were going with them went off to see the sights, but the other boys went, of course, to celebrate and to experience the English beer. And then when we started off we went, and then we were about a mile down the road when they said, "Where's Kevin? Where's Kevin?" And they couldn't find Kevin, so we stopped the bus and looked back, and here was Kevin running as hard as he could after the bus. He'd done it for about a mile, but he did manage to get in. And then the bus started and he wanted to get out again, but we kept him in.
You know, I remember when I was living with Jeff Erskine, we were roommates, and we used to have these parties, and you know, invariably, you know, they would just get out of hand. I mean, and our best party was, I mean, I've got like 5 stories from that same party, but you know, from Tom Phillip asking some girl if she wanted to go listen to CDs in his car, and he's drunker than I've seen him. I mean, he's monster faced at that point, but he's, you know, the CD, you want to go listen to CDs in my car? I think we did in the alley, because our garage opened up to the back alley. Kenny Helmer was doing a Dance of Flaming Assholes with the toilet paper and the thing. And then Bubba and Daphne destroyed my bathroom with shoving the shower curtain in the toilet, shaving cream everywhere. And then after everyone gone, I just had a moment where I just went, about 3 o'clock in the morning, I go, okay, everyone get the fuck out. Get out of here. Everyone's got to get out of here, because I'm done. Everyone's, you know. Then around 4 o'clock in the morning, I hear slamming, you know, in the cupboards and stuff. So I get out of my room, and it's Debbie Russo looking for food. And then I say, point her towards the you know, the pantry where the food was. Apparently she didn't find what she wanted, and she hauled off and kicked me in the shin. And then I just went, it's all right, I'm done. Yeah, find what you want. I'm going to bed.
The funniest story that I have with Alamo City was actually when I scored my first try, and I had to do a Zulu for Alamo City. We were at a party at Pete Mulhern's house, and just so happened that day Alice Mulhern had invited all of her professional friends over, and what Louis asked me to do that day was to strip down naked, walk around and gather 5 articles of women's underwear. And so if you can imagine the surprise and disgust, if you will, of girls that had no idea what rugby was when a naked rugby player came up to them and asked them for their underwear or bra. That's my funniest moment.
I would have to say spending an evening in Houston. We had a match, played well, went out, had some beers. First tournament for the Irish guy, and we ended up losing him. I don't know where he went. He said he was going to go outside and get some air. Didn't see him till the next practice, which was Tuesday. He was missing in action for probably about 3 days. Didn't know where he was, but it was a good time.
The Cayman Islands on tour. We had a guy by the name of Andre, who was a great guy, and a couple of the women went on tour with us as well, and they were supposed to do a Zulu. Well, they were kind of chickening out, and so Andre, basically their punishment was to run around the pitch topless. Well, they were starting to chicken out, so Andre volunteered, being the gracious guy that he was, "Hey, I'll strip down naked and run with you." So sure enough, they were running around. My parents are on tour with us as well. I remember my mom clambering to the front of the porch, and all she could say was, "I can't see anything. I can't see anything. All I can see are his eyes, his eyes." For those that don't know Andre, he was a colored fellow, and probably one of the most funniest things that we can remember on tour that go round.
Yeah, my most memorable moment I have no recollection of. And that was in Wales. It was our first match, beautiful surroundings. I'll never forget walking out there and thinking, man, I could live here.
We were playing against Bryn in the mud and muck, and at halftime I got subbed in at halftime, and so did Roger, and of course on their side they subbed in a couple of almost premiership type players, and we had a penalty, and I couldn't kick it because the ball was, my shoe was about 20 pounds and the ball was another 10 pounds, and trying to kick it out was not going to happen. So I turned around and said, well, let's just toe and go. And I go, who wants it? And I heard, and Roger was the first one to say, give me the ball. So I tap it, toss it to Roger, and I'm just glad I'm not holding the ball. So I gave it to Roger, and off he goes.
And then everything went slow-mo. It was just slow motion. I remember catching the ball. I mean, it was a Sports Illustrated moment. Then I just saw black.
One of their guys comes and just, I don't know, with his forehead, drives right into Roger's head. And from my vantage point, I was the closest one to it. I just saw a deformed face. It's funny now, but at the time it was like I was going, I've never seen that. A deformed face. He gets flung over there. Of course, I don't know where the ball is. And then he gets up, wobbly.
Well, I did remember the horizon kind of just going like this and like this, and I hit the ground, but I got up and kept playing. Stubborn as I am, I should have gone out, but I kept playing. And things that I've heard people describe it as, that how anybody could have survived that hit, they'll never know. The ooh factor from the sidelines.
And he's wobbly for like 3-4 days, and we're like, man, should we take him to the hospital? He's fine. He's not, is he slurring? And he's like, well, everyone's slurring. I mean, I can't tell. I mean, he's drinking beer. I guess he's fine. So we kind of throughout the week kind of kept an eye on him, but that was a big hit.
We were in a van with a number of individuals. Vans seem to come up a lot in these road trips. I don't understand that, but a number of people, and props quite often are the brunt of a lot of these jokes, and I've never understood why props always get these tossed at them. But Louis, I think, was driving the van, and he had to pull over to relieve himself, and he forgot to put it in park. And everybody else was passed out in the van, and Louis was relieving himself on the side of the road, and the van continued slowly down the road, and I don't remember a whole lot after that. I don't know if I remember a whole lot before that, but Louis got back in the van. I think everybody was saved.
I had no idea that rugby would give us an exposure to wildlife, like I got at, and I don't mean that kind of wildlife either. But there was the hawk that would apparently eat small rodents from our field, or small players, or opposition players. There was a time there was a rattlesnake right after a loose ruck or a loose scrum on the field, and one of our guys took it home and consequently was bitten by it. And there was a tarantula after we were on a sevens field. And there was a time that my brother John drove the lawnmower, I think that was the lawn boy, over a small little nest of bunnies and just totally furred them out.
As far as I know, I've never run over any bunnies out at the pitch. I've had the pleasure of meeting a lot of bunnies with Alamo City, and there are many bunnies at Alamo City now, I'm certain. But no, I never run over any bunnies, nor did I ever.
Hopefully Sean Rutledge will be here and tell his side of the story, so I'll just tell the beginning because it's on tape and it may not be for everybody's ears. But Sean was very creative, and at rugby tournaments there is frequently a shortage of bathrooms, and Sean was able to solve that problem. But it was a very unusual way. In fact, I won't say exactly what he did. It was a vehicle that he used, and it had some red lights on the top, and then he spent an evening someplace other than his home.
I'm not going to go into the Houston thing. Everybody knows the Houston thing. That's not going to get memorialized on tape on the advice of counsel.
Oh, there's no doubt that I think our club means contributing to the community. That's what sets us apart from other organizations, other athletic organizations specifically, and even more so sets us apart from other rugby clubs. That from day one, we started working with Alpha Louise, for example. I think that's probably the Christmas of '83, if not certainly by the next Christmas, '84, we're delivering Christmas presents, which we still do to this day, 25 years later. The last thing we added on was the last fall, the golf tournament raising money for cystic fibrosis. But I think that's what is really something else, that our boys, for all those years, were willing to put some time in for raising money and for young people and for the community.
It's just a great group of guys. I think we've done more, like Bill was saying, with charities and groups that, from St. Peter's, St. Joseph's Children's Home, to like with Alpha Louise, and it really makes it unique is that we're not just a rugby team, but we actually are involved in the community, which very few rugby teams in the country do.
Alamo City Rugby really means to me is the camaraderie and the family atmosphere that we've created. I remember starting off from the very beginning, way back in '83, and before that we used to have the Stars, and even back then we were a pretty close-knit team. People stuck together, and even now, it's 25 years later, I still talk to the guys who've played in the past, still email me, let me know what's going on and where they've been. You know, we find each other, or constantly keep finding each other again. You know, nobody ever really goes away from Alamo City. They just, you know, get lost.
You know, I will never forget all the people that I love. There's tons of people that are involved that, you know, we haven't even probably mentioned. You know, there's Roger Castillo that comes out, and there's Charlie Pavlich, who is an incredible athlete, and we probably haven't talked about him. There's number 8s that I've forgotten their names. There's Steve Jahusky. There's Lou Hernandez is one of my best friends, and I know that if anything were ever wrong, I could count on them. They will always support you, and they'll always be there for you.
Well, I got to tell you, I've had the chance in my life to travel quite a bit around the world, and I come in contact with rugby players and rugby teams wherever I go. And so Alamo City always had a sense of family, a sense of loyalty and camaraderie that, you know, it was the only team sport that I ever participated in my life. And I came in, you know, I was already 21 years old when I started playing, and it became a big deal for me. You know, it set the ground for everything else. And since then, I've met people around the world and in the state of Texas around rugby. And, you know, honestly, there hasn't been another group that is more familiar or friendly or supportive than I found, you know, with the family at Alamo City. So no matter how far I go away, it is the benchmark for me, and I always think about the guys that I played with when I was here.
There is a fraternity amongst rugby players that I don't think there is in any other sport. Some people have their theories about why that is. My theory is that you are, well, this is as close as you can get to battle without dodging bullets. You're throwing punches, you're stepping on people, you're biting people in some cases. Okay, just one time I saw somebody bite somebody. And the battle's over after 80 minutes. And what do you do after that? You celebrate. So I think that's unique. And I think that's what brings about that camaraderie, that bonding, that fraternity.
I've had the pleasure of playing for 3 clubs, you know, Alamo City, Austin Huns, and for Tempe when I moved to Phoenix and lived there for 3 years. And you really don't know what you've got. And I started playing with Alamo City first. I count UTSA also, but but that was such a small stint. You really don't know what you've got. You really don't know how much you're appreciative of that situation until you change. And every club is different. I've thought that they would all be pretty much the same, just the names are different and the faces are different, but they all have their own unique character. And I've enjoyed all three of the clubs that I've played with for various reasons, but I always keep coming back to Alamo City. I consider it my home club, my first club. I've always had a soft spot in my heart for Alamo City. I've always loved to play against Alamo City when I've been with Austin Huns. In fact, that gets me out of bed when I know that Alamo City's coming to town. I'll get out of bed just to make sure that I can play against Alamo City. The guys, the camaraderie, the friendship that I got from Alamo City it's different, and it's deeper than any friends that I've got from the other clubs.
You make a lot of friends, and they're there for a lifetime. And Alamo City, I've had the experience of playing with other clubs, Houston and Austin, and they're great. But it's like Alamo City hadn't changed as far as like being I feel the closest with anyway. It's difficult to explain, but it means a lot and always will. So.
Do you need a tissue?
I probably do.
I didn't know it when I started. But Alamo City's a smaller club in terms of numbers, and I knew after a while there were bigger clubs and other divisions. The San Antonio guys tried to recruit me whenever they could, but I didn't like those guys, and that's what I liked about Alamo City is it was a good bunch of guys, and we were a tight bunch of guys. We weren't just a tight bunch of guys on the field, we were a tight bunch of guys off the field.
Alamo City Rugby means it means the world to me. I've had many opportunities to play with other teams, and I've been lucky enough to be asked to play for other teams, and it never crossed my mind to play for anything else. Louis and the guys that I first came out with, this is my 12th season with Alamo City Rugby, and Louis and the guys that initially taught me how to play rugby mean the world to me. They're like my family. I am not from San Antonio originally, and every time I step on the field with Alamo City, it's like stepping on the field with your family.
Started in '92, I was 21, and at the time you don't realize how much stuff is done by some of the veteran and the older players. Now we're in 2008, so I understand that now, and it's just not. I mean, for me, it's not just one season or 1 year deal. It's there's during the season, off season, anything I can do to help out the club. So you ask me to do something, I'll do whatever. So the club means a lot to me.
Alamo City is to me is like a brotherhood. A group of friends get together, we play a little rugby and have a lot of fun. But it's really like having a second family.
One thing that we need to do as a club is recruit more, spread the word in the city. San Antonio's too big for us not to have 2 or 3 sides. So that's one thing I would say. Just if you start playing, and us being the older players, we need to make sure that we keep the younger players to make sure they keep coming out and have everybody feel welcome.
I would say, being as I am old and I've got gray hair, that I can give some advice. And I would say, in rugby, just like in everything else, you need everyone. And not only on the field, but off the field. And sometimes, as time goes by, somebody will rub you wrong. And you won't like this particular individual, and then you'll figure they're not that important. And so we automatically assign importance based on what people can do in the field. So if you've got somebody that's young, very fast, strong, athletic, coordinated, etc., and they can win games for you, then they're really, really important. But the people that do a lot of other things kind of go unnoticed. And those people are the ones, other than the great athletes, even though we've had a lot of those, and it's good to have them because we've got to win. But there are a lot of people that help in other ways, the people that show up at field day and help line things, and the people that get involved in the charity events and so forth. So you'll see the same faces working on the field, at Elf Louise, at the golf tournament, and so on and so forth. And like I said, over the years, sometimes somebody will rub you wrong, but I could just, the line of work that I'm in, I can't count the number of times that I would be irritated by someone and then just let it go and not burn my bridge, and then out of nowhere I'd be in a bind and that person would come along and save my hiney. And that's what I got to tell people. You need everybody. You need absolutely everybody.
As an individual player, if you want to play this game and play it well, you got to commit the time to stay in fit away from training. You got to commit the time to come into training. You got to commit the time to come into games. And that means home games and away games. And when I use the word commit, it's almost the wrong word, because it's, if you really love the game, it's not a commitment. It's like, it's what I want to do.
I've been fortunate enough to go to tour the UK a couple of times to play there, and what I've always admired about their clubs is that they've been around forever. And it would be great to see Alamo City be around 50 years, 80 years, 100 years. 25 years is nothing to sneeze at, so that's pretty good, and congratulations. But see if we can do 50, see if we can do 100, and have that tradition of a long-standing club. And it takes work. It doesn't happen by itself. My message to current players and new players is that, you know, be part of this club, but have this club be part of you. Give back to the club. And represent the club when you're out and about. You know, it's a ruffian sport played by gentlemen is what they say, and you got to be a gentleman when you're out there. Have fun. By all means, have fun. Everybody's got stories. But play the game well, be fit, but be part of the club, give back to the club.
You know, I tell you, I see the people such as Doc, such as Bill Harmon, who are still very heavily involved today, still trying to give back to the club that they fell in love with. And it's those type people that kind of give me my drive, and I hope that someday that I'm the legacy, people coming and asking me about what it was like with Alamo City in the old days. I really, really hope that once my playing years are over that I'm still able to contribute in some form or fashion.
Loyalty and trustworthiness are important on the field and off the field. The guys at Alamo City, you could call them at any time of night or day and ask them for something, and these guys would figure it out and they'd help you out. I know because I got calls all the time. I was never the guy calling anybody, but I got calls. And it's that feeling of brotherhood, I guess you might call it, or fraternity, you know, that is a big deal. So don't put yourself in a position with your teammates that they don't trust you. Go to training, do all the things you need to do to perform on the field, but off the field, realize that these are guys that you will, 20 years from now, look back on and respect, and you'll still be friends with, and you'll still rely on, and you'll do all these things with.
I think a very important thing for Alamo City, and there are some guys on the team right now who are playing, who are ex-players really, and maybe dabble at it still, that are really trying to get a good group, solid group. We're all good. All the old timers are good, of course, but are trying to get them involved back in the club. And I think that's critical to the strength of the team, to the growth of the team, to bring back the history, to bring back some guys that maybe have some money for a change, because they certainly didn't have it when they were playing for the team, and to get a legacy going for this team. And the best people to do that with are the ones that built the club to begin with. The Bill Harmons and the Tim Murphys and the Steve Chahuskys, and I mean, I could go on and go on. And guys from all over the world, once again, that have played with us and gone back and love coming back to our team when they can visit the United States. So I really think it's important to stay connected to the team, to give to the team in other ways than just on the field as you advance in years.
What I could say for the newer players that are coming out, really we need to look at our roots and see all the things that we have accomplished. We have many things that we have done throughout the years that we've been playing in existence, such as gaining our own pitch, making our bin. That was through one board that we grabbed our bin. We had the Fiesta tournament. It's always pleasing to me and very heartfelt that we get all our guys to do Elf Louise and Special Olympics and any other, the food bank. I mean, there's a few other things that we do. I just can't think of them offhand, but it's just so gracious that our guys have the time and can make the time to do this. I mean, we're just not a bunch of drunken fools, although that happens, but for the most part, we take care of business, and business has been good for this last couple of years. We've been in the playoffs, and I just want our guys to grasp that commitment that those who started way back in 1983, who got together at that time and decided that, you know, we were going to make Alamo City and then we weren't going anywhere. We were going to be here and we were going to be contenders for the duration. Every team that we play knows who we are. And I can't say that they have a chip on their shoulder for us, but it just seems like it. It seems like we always bring out the best in the other team. Sometimes we don't step up to the plate, but more often than not, we have, and we've overcome whatever adversity we've gotten on the field. And that makes me proud to be a coach and proud to be a player or member of Alamo City.
This 25th anniversary is really special to me. Like I said, it's my 12th season with Alamo City, and I want to thank all the old boys and the founding fathers of Alamo City, because it's a great sport, it's a great club, and like I said before, it's a big family to me. And thank you for letting me, allowing me, and giving me the opportunity to play this wonderful sport with this wonderful club.